Everyone, at some point in life, has faced the uncomfortable realization someone has been saying things about me behind my back. It might come through a subtle comment, a changed attitude, or a message from a mutual friend. They've been talking about you. Suddenly, your heart sinks. 1,000 thoughts race through your mind. Who said it? Why? What did I do? The feelings that follow hurt, confusion, betrayal, frustration can strike deeply, sometimes lingering far longer than we expect. This experience is universal yet deeply personal. It doesn't matter how confident you are, how kind you've been, or how strong your relationships seem. Being talked about in your absence feels like an invasion. Like someone rewrote your story without your permission and passed it around. For women, this experience can be especially cutting. Social connection is often a central part of how women navigate the world. We are raised in many cultures to value harmony, to nurture relationships, to be aware of the emotional currents around us. So when someone breaks that unspoken trust, when we find out that someone we know, maybe even someone we care about, has been discussing us negatively behind our backs, it's not just about the words. It's about trust being shattered, safety being compromised, and often self-worth being questioned. Even the most composed women can find themselves spiraling. Did I do something to deserve this? Was I not careful enough? Is there something wrong with me? These are not just passing thoughts, they're wounds to our emotional sense of self. They reflect the deeper human need for belonging, affirmation, and emotional safety. And yet, here is a truth we rarely hear aloud. Being talked about behind your back doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human and you're living a life that touches others, for better or worse. You exist, you take up space, you make choices, and you show up in the world. And people will talk. The goal isn't to avoid ever being talked about, because that's impossible. The goal is to learn how to respond with clarity, strength, and self-respect when it happens. How to protect your energy without becoming bitter. How to understand the motivations behind gossip without taking them on as your own burdens. How to move forward wiser, freer, and more rooted in your own truth. Because in the end, the only thing more powerful than what others say about you is what you choose to believe about yourself. Why do people talk behind your back? Understanding why it happens won't erase the pain, but it helps us detach from the personal sting of it. People talk for a variety of reasons, some more about them than about you. 1. Jealousy. Sometimes your energy, your success, your confidence, or simply your uniqueness can unsettle others. You walk into a room and you carry yourself with quiet assurance. You've worked hard, made tough choices, and begin to see the fruits of your effort, whether it's in your career, your personal growth, your relationships, or simply in how at peace you are with yourself. You don't demand attention, but your presence is felt. You don't seek approval, but you've earned respect. And sometimes, just being yourself fully, unapologetically, can make others uncomfortable, not because you've done anything wrong, but because your light exposes their own insecurities. Your boldness reminds them of their hesitation. Your confidence stirs something inside them, something they haven't yet come to terms with. Instead of asking themselves why they feel threatened, they look for ways to dim you. And one of the easiest ways to do that, especially in our socially entangled world, is to talk behind your back. They might start small, harmless seeming comments like, "She's so full of herself these days," or, "I don't know why she acts like she's better than everyone." Over time, those whispers grow. Sometimes out of bitterness, sometimes out of boredom, sometimes out of a deep discomfort with change. Because here's a hard truth. Many people are more comfortable seeing others stay small. Not because they are inherently bad people, but because your growth forces them to confront their own stagnation. Your freedom reminds them of the cages they've built for themselves. And when you begin to outgrow roles, relationships, or patterns that used to define you, it disturbs the status quo, not just externally, but internally, within the people who once found comfort in your familiarity. For women, this can be especially true. Society has conditioned us to compete, to compare, to believe there's only one seat at the table. When a woman rises, shines, or carves her own path, especially if she does so without fitting the mold of being overly humble, endlessly accommodating, or quietly self-sacrificing, it challenges the deeply embedded scripts we've been taught to follow. You might be the woman who left a toxic relationship and started over, or the one who launched a business and finally started earning what she deserves, or the one who dared to say no, set boundaries, and stop apologizing for existing. And suddenly, people who once celebrated you might seem distant, cold, critical. They might start talking not because you failed, but because you succeeded on your own terms. It's important to remember their gossip is not a reflection of your worth, but of their unresolved feelings. Some people project their fears rather than face them. And rather than admit they're inspired, challenged, or even a little envious, they try to shrink what they don't understand. And gossip, in many cases, isn't really about you at all. It's about how others interpret your light through the lens of their own shadow. It's about what your strength stirs in them. For some, it stirs admiration. For others, discomfort. For a few, hostility. But none of that defines you. Your truth is not up for public vote. You don't have to dim yourself to be less threatening. You don't have to explain your success, your joy, your evolution. Not everyone will clap when you win, and that's okay. Their silence doesn't cancel your growth. Their whispers don't undo your power. Because the truth is, if people are talking about you behind your back, it often means you're ahead. You're moving forward. You're choosing growth over comfort, authenticity over approval, self-respect over popularity. And that can make people uncomfortable. But you weren't made to live a life that pleases everyone. You were made to live a life that is true. So let them talk, let them question, let them misunderstand. Your job isn't to manage their opinions. Your job is to keep showing up for your own life, unapologetically, courageously, and joyfully. Because at the end of the day, their gossip fades. But your integrity, your freedom, your truth, that lasts. 2. Misunderstanding and prejudice. You may not have done anything wrong, truly, and yet you may have been misread. This is one of the most frustrating parts of being talked about behind your back. You could be walking through life with the best intentions, treating people with kindness, focusing on your own growth, and still find yourself at the center of someone else's misunderstanding. It's not always about wrongdoing. Sometimes it's about how others choose to interpret you through their own limited lens. People often jump to conclusions based on fragments, not the full picture, just snippets. A sentence overheard out of context. A facial expression they misread. A story passed from one person to another, each time losing a bit more truth and gaining a bit more distortion. Maybe you made a joke that was lighthearted in spirit, but someone didn't understand your humor and thought you were being sarcastic or mean. Maybe you spoke your mind in a meeting clearly, assertively, and someone decided you were too aggressive or trying too hard. Maybe you were simply quiet one day, needing space, and suddenly it became, "She's cold," or "She thinks she's better than us." It doesn't take much for people to build narratives. And once they've formed a story in their minds, they tend to look for evidence to support it, rather than seeking to understand you more fully. This tendency to assume and judge based on limited information is human, but it's also harmful. And for women, the tightrope is even thinner. There's often an invisible line we're expected to walk confident, but not too bold, kind, but not too passive, independent, but not too much. If you lean too far in either direction, if you express your personality too strongly, if you carry yourself with a little too much certainty, suddenly you're no longer relatable. You become a target. It's subtle, but it's real. A man might be praised for being direct or ambitious, while a woman using the same tone might be labeled intimidating or bossy. A woman who chooses solitude and peace might be seen as arrogant or unfriendly, while a man doing the same is focused, or independent. This double standard creates a complex social terrain, where women are often expected to be self-aware to the point of self-erasure, constantly editing their tone, posture, words, even facial expressions just to maintain social harmony. And even then, it's not enough. Even then, someone might decide they don't like you not for what you did, but for how you made them feel about themselves. You might be too much for some people. Too vibrant, too honest, too joyful, too free. And instead of reflecting on why your presence unsettles them, they choose the easier path to talk behind your back, to shrink you in conversations where you're not present, to reduce your complexity into convenient labels they can use to feel better about themselves. This isn't fair. It's exhausting. And yet, it's not your job to mold yourself into the version of you that offends the fewest people. It's your job to be you, truthfully, respectfully, fully. The misinterpretations of others do not define you. Their comfort is not your compass. Of course, it's painful to be misunderstood. It's human to want to be seen clearly and treated with fairness. But when that doesn't happen, remember this. You don't have to carry the burden of someone else's limited understanding. You can choose to release it, to remind yourself that being misread is not the same as being wrong. Let them say what they want. Let them form their stories. Your character, your truth, your intention, these are known to you. And in the long run, your consistent presence will speak louder than their short-lived whispers. 3. Unresolved emotional hurt. Sometimes the gossip is rooted in pain. Maybe someone felt slighted by you intentionally or unintentionally, but didn't have the courage or emotional maturity to address it directly. So they choose an indirect outlet, talking to others. It's not about you being a bad person. It's about them not knowing how to handle hurt in a healthy way. 4. They just talk too much. There are people who aren't malicious, they're just careless with their words. They like to tell stories, stir the pot, and keep conversations interesting. And unfortunately, you become a piece of their entertainment. They may not mean harm, but harm still happens. And even unintended gossip can damage reputations and relationships. So what should you do? You've heard the whispers. You know someone's been talking? The sting is real, but before you react, pause. Don't let pain speak for you. 1. Look inward first. When you find out someone has spoken negatively about you behind your back, your first instinct might be to react to defend yourself, to feel hurt, or to immediately push the pain away. But before you take any external action, it's powerful to take a quiet moment to look inward. Not to self-criticize, not to carry shame or guilt, but to gently explore the situation with honesty and compassion. Ask yourself, did something I said or did get misunderstood? This doesn't mean taking on responsibility for someone else's projections or assumptions, but it does mean considering whether something you did might have been interpreted differently than you intended. Misunderstandings happen all the time. Humans are complex. Communication isn't always clear. Sometimes our words land in ways we didn't expect, especially when filtered through someone else's personal experiences or insecurities. Next, ask, is this person important enough for me to care? This is a critical question, and one we don't ask ourselves often enough. Not every opinion deserves equal weight in your life. There's a difference between being aware of social dynamics and giving your energy away to people whose values don't align with yours. If the person gossiping is someone close to a friend, a colleague, a family member, then perhaps a conversation or boundaries needed. But if they're distant or irrelevant to your inner world, their opinion may say far more about them than it ever could about you. Then consider, does this situation reflect something about me, or does it reveal more about them? Sometimes people talk because they're in pain, because they're unfulfilled, because they're navigating their own inner chaos and don't have the tools to process it maturely. Gossip often arises not from facts, but from frustration, envy, or a need to feel in control. When you recognize this, it becomes easier not to absorb their words as personal attacks, but to see them as emotional signals from someone else's unresolved issues. These questions are not meant to lead to quick conclusions. They are meant to slow you down, to give your heart space to breathe. Because often, what hurts the most is not just the words that were said, it's the confusion, the ambiguity, not knowing why. Our minds crave clarity, especially when our emotions are tangled. And when you sit with yourself long enough to reflect, you begin to regain a sense of control not over them, but over your inner world. Reflection doesn't erase the pain, but it helps place it in context. It helps you remember that you are not powerless, that your sense of self doesn't have to be shaken by outside noise. You begin to see the difference between what belongs to you and what doesn't, between your truth and someone else's version of it. That distinction alone can be deeply healing. So don't rush past the questions. Sit with them. Let them guide you not to self-blame, but to self-awareness. Because in clarity, we find peace. And from peace, we move forward with intention stronger, clearer, and less reactive to the distractions around us. 2. Don't react emotionally, yet. The urge to defend yourself, call them out, or vent your rage is understandable. But impulsive reactions often escalate things. Give yourself space to cool down. Sometimes silence is not weakness, it's strength. It's the refusal to give others control over your peace. Wait until your emotions settle. Responding from a place of calm is not only more powerful, but often more healing. 3. Respond selectively, if it's worth it. If the person talking about you is someone you still need to interact with, a coworker, classmate, or relative, consider addressing it directly, but respectfully. You could say something like, "I heard some things that were said about me and I wanted to check in directly with you. If I've done something that bothered you, I'm open to hearing it from you, not through others." This approach is non-confrontational, honest, and emotionally intelligent. It sets boundaries while still leaving room for resolution. 4. Reconnect with your true self-worth. You are not what people say about you. You are what you consistently show up as, how you treat others, how you live your values, how you navigate hard situations. Instead of obsessing over someone else's opinion, invest that energy in building a life that reflects your inner truth. Let your actions be your voice. Let your peace be your power. The healing perspective. You can't control others, but you can control yourself. Trying to stop people from talking is a losing game, but choosing how to respond, that's entirely in your hands. When you stay calm in the storm, when you choose to move forward instead of lashing out, you're not being passive, you're being wise. You're protecting your emotional energy, your focus, and your dignity. The more you live in alignment with your core values, the less the noise matters. And gradually, the people who truly matter will see you for who you are, not who others claim you are. Final thoughts. Let life speak for you. In a world where everyone has something to say, where opinions fly faster than truth, it's tempting to try to fight every falsehood. But you don't have to fight every battle. Some things don't need a reaction. Some people don't deserve your explanation. Some gossip dies simply because you don't feed it. Keep showing up, keep doing your work. Keep choosing integrity over drama. Because in the end, life has a way of revealing the truth. And when it does, your calmness, your quiet strength, your refusal to stoop to negativity, those things will speak louder than any rumor ever could. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.